fix it, right.
Okay, so I'm going to introduce you and we'll get started. So my rabbi said, if you don't start on time, you never will. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. I'm Rabbi Dan Moskovitz. It's a pleasure to welcome you to Temple Sholom and what we know will be a fascinating and important evening here in our ongoing conversation and concern for Israel. I must tell you that I am thrilled you should never count people, but I'm thrilled with our numbers. I'm so encouraged that so many have come out from across the community and beyond the Jewish community. We welcome our friends here from various faith traditions that have come this evening into this house of worship to be here for this conversation. And most of all, we welcome Dr. Kedar, who has flown all the way from Toronto, and then he's flying back tonight to Montreal, and then to parts unknown. I should only have your frequent flyer miles, not alone, less to mention your intellect. So we are thrilled that you're here. I want to thank, first I want to thank our tremendous staff, and Rochelle Garfinkel and Bernie and Rafina, our maintenance staff. You know, we've been doing a lot of programs at the synagogue lately, and Sunday nights are tough because it's the end of the week and people want to be home with their families, and I really want to thank them. And when you see them, please thank them for coming out to get the temple ready, and Dimitar outside, and our security volunteers from our board for making this place available and accessible and secure. So we can thank them. I also want to thank Bruce and Joan Howitt for making this possible. Bruce came to my office one day and said, "Do you know about Dr. Mordechai Kedar?" And I had read things, I had heard things, but I didn't know him. But Bruce knew him. And Bruce was able to put us together and to make this event possible. So Bruce, thank you. And he flew all the way back up from Palm Springs, so thank you. And I want to welcome our temple president, David Schwartz, who's here in the back. If anyone has questions, David, I'd say stand up, but he's very, very tall. If you have questions about Temple Sholom or anything that's going on here, please ask myself or David Schwartz or Bruce or anyone that self-volunteers themselves as a member of the synagogue. And where's Bob Rivlin? Devlin. Where's Bob Devlin? Mazel tov. You had a baby. You had a grandson. All right. 6 weeks early. How's he doing?
Fantastic.
Do we have a name yet? Aiden. Shem Tov. This is Shem Tov. So Dr. Mordechai Kedar is, as I think you all know, an Israeli scholar of Arabic literature and a lecturer at Bar-Ilan University. He holds a Ph.D. from Bar-Ilan University. Dr. Kedar is an academic expert on the Israeli Arab population. He served for 25 years in the IDF, in the Israeli Defense Forces and Military Intelligence. And the IDF, that is not a contradiction in terms. Where he specialized in Islamic groups and the political discourse of Arab countries, the Arabic press, and mass media, and the Syrian domestic arena, which was the subject of his doctoral dissertation and has, of course, been on the front pages and the front of our minds and concerns over the last number of years. The Los Angeles Times said about Dr. Kedar that he is one of the few Arabic-speaking Israeli pundits seen on Arabic satellite channels defending Israel. And we are so honored to have you here this evening. We had dinner beforehand at Cafe 41, and it was like sitting with a rock star. Everybody that came in, from Rabbi Weinberg and his wife from Chabad, and Israeli guys I didn't know, where everybody wanted to shake his hand or take a picture. And we're just thrilled and honored to have you here. So Dr. Kedar, welcome to Temple Sholom.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Moskovitz. And I thank also Bruce Howitt for bringing me and pushing this event. Thank you very much. I think I'll start with the questions. I will get to the lecture, don't worry. But it's usually I don't do it, but I think that what happened recently in Ottawa and what happens in the Middle East, I think brings people to all kinds of questions, which I would like to know. I will not answer them immediately, but I would like to know what people are interested in. Then I will weave it into the presentation. So please start with the question. We'll have later also another phase of questions and answers, but if there is somebody who particularly wants to hear about something, I'll try to answer this. Sir?
How are you reading the security situation along the northern border?
Of Israel or Canada? Israel's border or Canada's border?
We actually just moved here from Bellingham, Washington, from Korea,
Good.
and the situation is a little bit tense.
Little bit, lot of bit. Okay, good question. Actually, with the situation with Hezbollah, you actually saw with Hezbollah in Lebanon, what are the prospects of another round of violence between us and Hezbollah? This actually, I believe you are interested in. Right?
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
I'm wondering, you speak a lot about radicalization. I'm wondering about radicalization happening out of the campuses,
Here.
Canada, North America, if you think it's serious, if you think it's funded from the outside, and what the role of students and of Jewish leadership should be in combating this radicalization, and if there's any legal facet to that as well.
Okay. Sir.
Is Bibi going to make it back in?
Bibi, okay. Well, actually, you ask maybe what will be the outcome of the elections. Okay. Yes.
How is it that the Muslim world is keeping quiet?
Keeping?
Keeping quiet about what's happening to the Muslims, the radicalized.
How the Muslim world views what happens today?
Yes.
The good ones, the good guys. Okay. Actually, you ask, I believe, about where are the moderate Muslims? Where are they? If there are, let them rise. Okay, just a minute. My memory is very short. Okay, ladies first.
How do you evaluate the threat of ISIS and Daesh?
ISIS. Okay.
These Russians claim that the radicals kind of kidnapped,
Hijacked.
the Islam from what it is.
Okay, it's connected to the moderate versus radical Muslims. Sir?
Do you see any risk to Israel over the death of the Saudi king?
I would even broaden the question. What are the ramifications of the change in the Saudi kingdom for the Middle East in general and Israel in particular? Okay. Yes, sir?
Yes, I'd like to say that, maybe our Western efforts are very much ineffective, and I'd really be interested to know what your advice would be to people like me, average Canadians, what we can do. Also, what can we do to encourage our government? Because it does look like our efforts are ineffective.
All right. Yes, ma'am.
What do you think about the threat of Iran?
Great question. Very important. Yes, ma'am.
What do you think the impact on any potential peace is of increasing the settlements in the West Bank?
Settlements and peace.
I know.
What's the connection, if there is any?
Yeah, okay, sir.
Lately, some people are worried about the Muslim
Canada.
How different is the Muslim population in Israel than in Europe?
Okay, I would say how do Europe can benefit from the Israeli experience dealing with 20% Muslims as a part of population. Okay. Well, yes, sir. I think it will be the last because already, okay.
Do you think Israel has anyone to negotiate with?
Anyone to negotiate with?
Yes.
Okay. I think I'll stop here because some of these questions, Rabbi Moskovich will have to bring me again for a whole. It's okay. I come once in a while to this continent, so it's okay. But, let me start with, I will shorten my presentation from what I planned, and will leave much more time for questions and answers. My limit is, my flight is at 11:20. So I took the latest. So if I have to be there an hour earlier, it's 10:20, assuming that it's in half an hour, so I can be here almost until 10. 10 minutes. So until 10. No, I'm serious. We have good almost 3 hours. Really, if people are willing, I'm yours until I take off. Is there anything on TV?
Yes, there is. Yes, there is.
Okay. Let me start with the source of all the problems. By the way, these are my kids. They are nice because of my wife. They bring me much pride. I will start with trying to answer a question which was not asked, because this answer could give us a good background for many answers which were already asked. The Middle East suffers from two major genetic diseases, genetic problems. Genetic problems means it was the genesis, means the creation of the modern Middle East was already with these two problems embedded into these states. And what we see today is the outcome of these genetic problems. What are they? By the way, we failed to operate some presentations. I'll do it in more appropriate way. Look, this is the Middle East, this is Africa, this is Saudi Arabia, or the Arab Peninsula, Iraq is here, Iran is here, this is Europe, and this is the Sahara Desert. See this is the Atlantic Ocean, and Canada is on the other side of but this is more or less the Middle East. This is actually shows us immediately the source of all the problems, the desert. The desert. Once I took a flight from Amsterdam in the north to South Africa, and we crossed the coastline above Libya, when Libya was still a stable state, and it took the jumbo 3 hours until I saw the first tree. Jumbo flies in a speed of some almost 1,000 kilometers an hour. It's 980. So 3,000 kilometers is the width of the Sahara with not even one single tree. If you take the flight to the length of the Sahara, it will take you more than 6 hours until you see the first tree. I think it's a little bit different than Canada. Here you take a journey of 10 miles How many rivers do you cross on the way? And all of them are good water you can drink, at least your horse can drink. So nobody here fights on water or resources, actually, which Mother Earth give us. This is not the situation in the Middle East. And it didn't start yesterday or 100 years ago. This is for millennia already, where this desert actually imposes a certain lifestyle on the people who want to survive in the desert. In the desert, first of all, you have to stick to a source of water and to defend it in pain of death, because there are other groups in the desert who would like to take your spring or your well or your ditch or whatever you dug in order to find some water, because they also need the water for themselves, for their camels or the sheep. So the Middle East is a constant place of violence, of wars, which start with the issue of water, of living, because this is essential. Without water, you are a dead man. This is why you have to go to sleep, if you go to sleep, with your hand on your sword. And in modern times, with your hand on your Kalashnikov, the AK-47, because the one who shoots the second does not shoot anymore. You understand why? So this is why violence all over the Middle East is such an immediate a tool to use in any dispute, because everybody is afraid that the other side will use violence before him and he will win before I start acting. This is something which is engraved into the culture of the Middle East. And what you see today, the violence of hundreds of thousands of people who are killed for other reasons, is the outcome of what these nations or these peoples who tried to survive in the desert had to adopt and had to adjust themselves to such a lifestyle. This is, I would say, one genetic disease or genetic problem which is embedded into the culture of the Middle East. It's very hard to change it because people are brought up on it. All the stories, all the fables, all the songs go around us or revolve around us and them. I mean, us, the good ones, and them, the bad ones. Those who are our enemies. And this is why the other, with a big O, in the Middle East is almost always is viewed as the enemy. And this is a very problematic thing when they have to accept other people like us, Jews, Israelis, Christians, others who come to the Middle East. They are viewed immediately as the enemy because this is the tradition, the cultural tradition of the Middle East. Because before I go to religions, it's not about Islam, it's about the culture of the Middle East, which is shared for Muslims. Christians maybe less, but definitely Druze, Alawis, Sabais, Mandays, all those religions which exist in the Middle East, they have to struggle for their survival. So it's not connected to any religion, it is connected to the culture of the area. What happened as a result is when modern states were established, especially by the colonialism, the British, the French, and in the Libyan case is the Italian one, states were marked by rulers. As you can see very clearly at the border between Egypt and Libya, this is almost 1,500 kilometers of a ruler. And between Egypt and Sudan, Libya and Chad, Algeria, and in Iraq as well. If you draw a line by a ruler, means that you couldn't care less about the people, because you might merge together groups which never lived in peace with each other, or you divide groups which happen to live in the area. Because if you draw a line like this with a ruler, you do it in the cellar of the Ministry of Colonies in London. You don't do it on the ground, because on the ground you might have accommodate your line with groups which live in the area. But if you draw it with the ruler, you couldn't care less about them. And that's actually what happened in the Middle East. Those states were created by the colonialism, for the colonialism, to serve the interests of the colonialism, and I can give you many examples to how Britain and France created states in order to serve their own interests. Just two quick examples. The Kurdish district of Iraq, which was annexed to Iraq 6 years after Iraq was established, was annexed to Iraq only because of the oil, which was found in the areas of Kirkuk and Mosul in northern Iraq, and the British wanted the oil to be under the king whom they nominated. So they took it, and all the atrocities through the 20th century between the Arabs and the Kurds in Iraq were the result of this annexation of the Kurdish district only because of the oil. So the British greed or greediness to oil actually created this problem, which brought about the death of dozens of thousands of people in Iraq to the second part of the 20th century. Another example is Sinai in Egypt. Sinai is populated by people who are not Egyptians. They speak in different language, in different dialect. They are Bedouins, while the Egyptians are peasants, traditionally. And until this very day, Egypt has not yet gained the control over Egypt, and we see today all these jihadists who took Sinai as a refuge or asylum. Definitely this is the result of the fact that Sinai is not controlled by Egypt properly. This whole thing is only because the British annexed Sinai to Egypt in order to create a buffer zone between Eretz Israel, which was then controlled by the Ottomans, and the Suez Canal, which they used in order to get to India through the Mediterranean, Suez Canal, and the Red Sea. So only in order to protect the British ships, which used the Suez Canal, they annexed the Sinai to Egypt. So the Ottomans will be beyond the Sinai desert. So all the suffering which Egypt today suffers from Sinai is the result of the British mindset of the 19th century. Okay? So this is why states in the Middle East still suffer from the colonialism's interest. Now, add to this the violence, you can understand why these states are dysfunctional, as we see. A third problem is the regimes. Iraq, Syria, Yemen, Algeria, Libya, Morocco to extent, definitely Sudan, were all, the regimes in these countries were, until they started to be toppled 4 years ago, they were illegitimate regimes altogether. Because there are always one minority which took over the whole place. Iraq, for example, is fragmented to tribes. People are not aware of it, but this is the real map of Iraq. While one tribe, the Dulaimis, the tribe of Saddam Hussein, took over the whole country. So it is illegitimate regime because it represents only one tribe, which who are Sunni, a minority. A minority, because the majority in Iraq are Shi'i Muslims. So he cannot be legitimate, he was never elected. In Libya, the Gaddafi, also another small tribe, very vicious and cruel tribe to history. The name actually testifies. Gaddafi is an adjective, like Tel Avivi, Yerushalmi, Haifa'i, okay? So what's the name of the tribe? Kadhaf ad-Dam. Kadhaf ad-Dam means in Arabic, the one who spritzes blood, who sheds blood. And according to all the stories in Libya, they gained this name for a reason. That's why they behaved. He himself was vicious. I will not describe you how he dealt with his opponents. So state after state, if you go, and the Hashemites in Jordan were brought again by the British. The Hashemite kingdom are Saudis, but the British brought them in order to control Jordan. The Alawis in Syria are infidels, are not even Muslims. So how can an infidel be the superior above a Muslim? This is totally unacceptable by Islam. So not only they don't have the right to, those Alawis in Syria who are like 10% of the population, not only they don't have the right to control the country because they are minority, there is a big question if they have at all the right to live being infidels, idol worshippers, real idol worshippers. I can show you their sanctuaries with statues of pigeons, Mother Mary. This is what they worship. So according to Islam, they have to be decapitated because, or convert to Islam. So they are legitimate rulers. I'm talking about Assad the son, his father Assad, the Assad Hafez Assad, and Salah Jadid, who was the president before Hafez Assad between 1966 and 70. So if you go to these countries one after one and you check, is this regime which this country has or had is legitimate, you find that in most cases the answer is no. So these are actually the genetic problems of the Middle East. The states as frameworks are illegitimate. The regimes as a ruling elite is not legitimate. They were never elected. And violence actually is the name of the game. So this is actually what explains what happened in the Middle East through, let's say, the second half, at least, of the 20th century, and what brought about the explosion which we see today since December of 2010, when those regimes started to collapse like a domino effect. It started in Tunisia, moved to Egypt, then to Libya, Yemen, Bahrain, and was hushed by the Saudis, and Syria in March 2011, and it is, the flames are very high until this very day. In addition to Iraq, which is a mayhem already since 2003, and this is what we say, welcome to the Middle East. All the rest is commentary. These are the core problems of the Middle East. Unfortunately, the media do not talk about this. They are not aware of it. They send somebody to take some pictures in Cairo or in Libya, and well, that's what they see. War. Why? Who created it? What is the situation? What brought about this situation? They are too shallow and too superficial to bring the viewers the real reasons or the core reasons of what happened or what happens in the Middle East. To a degree that even the main commentator about the Middle East of the New York Times, Thomas Friedman, stood once in 2011 in the Tahrir Square with demonstrations against Mubarak, and he was there when Mubarak was ousted, says, hey, democracy is coming to Egypt. Okay, and everybody asks what the prospects of democracy, which can it come to the Middle East or not? And I watched it on the, I think he said it also in live broadcast on the CNN. I almost tore my hair out. Good thing that I don't have a toupee. Because this actually shows why Americans are wrong when they come to assess the Middle East. In their view, or in many people in the West as well, I'm afraid in this country as well, there are only two kinds of regimes. Either democracy like us, like Europe, America, Australia, New Zealand, Israel, or dictatorships like Soviet Union, ex-East Germany, Hungary, of those days of the communism, North Korea, some Arab countries. These are the two paradigms, these are the two kinds of regime which exist in the world. Okay, so if a dictator collapses, what will be there? Democracy. What else? There is nothing in the market, nothing else. It's either dictatorship or democracy. So if a dictator is being ousted, evidently it will be democracy. What else? There is no other merchandise in the market. Okay? What about anarchy? Who thought about this as an alternative? Means lawlessness. Okay? Definitely Libya is the example for an anarchy. Syria could be, Iraq to an extent, Afghanistan, you name it. Okay? So definitely anarchy is one alternative for either dictatorship or democracy. But in the Middle East we have another kind of government or state which proved to be better than both dictatorship and democracy. And I mean by this the Gulf Emirates. Gulf Emirates I'm talking about Kuwait, Qatar, and the 7 Emirates of the United Arab Emirates. This is the Persian Gulf, this is Saudi Arabia, this is Iran. Kuwait, Qatar, and the 7 Emirates of the Union, of the United Arab Emirates, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Ras Al Khaimah, Fujairah, Ajman, all these which we never hear about in the media. Why don't we hear about them? Because nothing happens there. They make money, that's all. Okay? Stable countries. Okay, so why are they so quiet and prosperous? Some would say because of the oil, right? Wrong. Iraq has a lot of oil, and Iraq is a mayhem. Libya has a lot of oil, even more, and gas. And Libya is a hell. Yemen, Sudan, all producing countries, and they are hell. So evidently, not the, and Dubai has no oil and no gas. What does Dubai have? 3 things. Sand, and, how did you know? And sand. So how come they are so rich with so much sand? Who buys the sand? The first part they turned into free trade zones. Every company in the world is there. Second are attractions for tourists. 10 million tourists a year only in Dubai. The third part they turned into lucrative real estate, houses, apartments, very, very luxurious. And many rich people in the world have houses in Dubai. So this is how they make money, business. So evidently it's not the oil which makes the life good in the Gulf. So what is this? What is the element which makes the Gulf a good place to live in? The fact that every one of these countries, Kuwait, Qatar, and the 7 Emirates, is one single tribe. One single tribe. Al-Sabah, Al is tribe. Al-Sabah is Kuwait. Al-Thani is Qatar, this one. And Al-Nihyan, this is the name of the tribe. The tribe of Abu Dhabi. And every one of them like this is one Al. And high fences make good neighbors. Nobody fights with anybody. The tribe lives its own life. The leadership is legitimate leadership of the tribe. They don't have elections. They don't need elections. They have leadership, not politicians. You know, democracy actually could be described in a very odd way. We as a democracy elect some group of people to run the country. If they fail, we elect other group, right? After 4 years or so. Okay? When they fail, we elect another group who will also fail, and we elect another one. So actually democracy is the ability of the citizens to elect the governments which will fail to run the country. Okay? Okay, it's not exactly this, but this is one of the, okay, they don't elect anyone because the leadership is built in. The leaders are the leading families since they were riding camels in the desert 200 years ago. Okay, today they are riding golden Lamborghinis or silver Bugatti. You know, all these cars which you produce by hand and you get in a box, $4 million the bill. Okay, so okay, what's wrong? What's wrong with this regime? Legitimate, stable, good for the people. They really care for the people. They are not corrupt. Because they are the cousins of everyone in the street. Because it's one tribe. Everyone is related to each other. Maybe this is a better kind of a state for tribal societies like in the Middle East, which have to live in tribes because they live in a desert, and the tribe is the cornerstone of the societies in the Middle East because you don't rely on others. And when you live near a spring for some years, the sons, the grandsons, the grandchildren, the great-grandchildren, we are all one tribe. So definitely the tribal society fits much better an emirate like in the Gulf. This is why in the Gulf they have good people, good life. All the states which were defined, marked, and shaped by the colonialism are failing states because those states reflect the European mindset, the European statehood, the European kind of how to build a state with a parliament, elections, prime minister, president, judicial body, all these things which actually were created in the West, for the West, by the West, according to the Western mindset, Western shape of society, of individuals, mainly. This fits the West democracy. But when it comes to the Middle East, it doesn't work with this. The society is different. Society needs something else. This is actually, I think, the source of all the problems in the Middle East. That the modern Arab state is illegitimate because it doesn't fit the society. Democracy, which everybody talks about and praises, is another problem. Look, democracy is I would say, it's a cake, which is made by several ingredients. What are the ingredients? Human rights, political freedoms, freedom of speech, freedom of cartoons. I'm not trying to be funny. Freedom of women, okay? Freedom of religion, freedom from religion, equality between ethnic groups and religious groups, freedoms of gays and lesbians. Okay, and elections. These are, let's say, the ingredients of the democratic cake. Okay, now go and check how these societies react to these ingredients. Women's rights, excuse me, in the Arab world, a woman can allow herself to do whatever she likes with whoever she likes only because she passed the age of 18 and she has the freedom to do whatever she likes. Can she choose her spouse, her husband? Can she go around with the unveiled hair in some societies? In some societies, unveiled face? Not to mention other things like divorce or living with her boyfriend. Excuse me, in the Islamic world, the Arab world. So the concept of women's lib are almost totally unacceptable by the vast majority. There are small slivers of the society which could accept it, the moderns, especially those who learned in UBC or in other universities in the West. Okay, they adopted the Western way of thinking, but the vast majority of the people who did not immigrate to the West in order to study in Oxford or Yale or whatever, they didn't absorb this modern kind of attitude to women to allow their daughters or sisters to behave as Western girls. So definitely what we know about women's rights is almost totally unacceptable in these societies. Freedom from religion. What happens to a Muslim if he denounces Islam? Will be shot by hand. Okay? Is this kind of honoring his freedom, religious freedom? Minority rights. Ask the Copts, the Christians in Egypt, what they know about minority rights. Ask the Christians all over the Middle East. Ask the Yazidis in Iraq recently, who are hungered to death in northern Iraq by the Islamic State. Okay? So it's unheard of in Islam that a Muslim is equal to a Christian or a Jew or a kafir, means or idol worshipper. It's totally unacceptable by Islam. Even the moderate Muslims, and I'll relate to this. Almost every cornerstone of democracy which we believe in is either totally or almost totally rejected by Islamic societies. So again, democracy is something which is tailored by the West in order to deal with the problems of the West, especially after the Industrial Revolution of the late 17th century in France. Okay, this is something which fits the Western culture, the Western mindset, the Western societies. Definitely, it's good. But who told you that it fits other societies which remain tribal, which remained loyal to the religion, to the Islamic religion, which rejects all these things? So when you come to ask about what the prospects of democracy in the Middle East, especially when it comes to Thomas Friedman and he stands in Tahrir Square, okay, this man sees the dots, but he doesn't connect them. He doesn't see the line, unfortunately. But okay, later he said that he was too hasty, by too hasty, okay. But, okay, these are, when we think about the Middle East, we have to think from within the Middle East. We cannot look at the Middle East and start to assess it or to judge it and to ask what's wrong with these people. Nothing is wrong with these people. They act according to their culture. Okay, because if we say what's wrong with them, we already mark them as bad people, what's wrong with them. Okay, so this is what defines, what describes the Middle East. Unfortunately, it comes on their expense before everybody else. And now, when those countries, those states collapse one after the other, this is the time for all kinds of things which are oppressed by these countries to come out from under the rug and to come to the surface, just like what the Islamic State which we see today. What we see today, the IS, which was formerly called ISIS, they omitted the second IS. The second IS stood for Iraq and Syria, the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, or Sham, which is the same. But since last June, the Caliph, the self-nominated Caliph, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, omitted the second IS because he doesn't restrict himself anymore to the space of Syria and Iraq and Syria. Because according to his mindset or view, his caliphate already, or should take all the space from Indonesia and Japan in the east, all the way to British Columbia in the west. Okay? So in the long way. So this is why he calls his state the Islamic State. And it appeals to many Muslims, organizations and individuals who already pledge allegiance to this Islamic State. And this is the result of the collapse of these artificial states which lived on a borrowed time. And the writing was on the wall. But it was in Arabic. Who knows Arabic? To read the writing. And at this point, I really should make a remark. Look, would anybody accept any paper or research done on the Canadian society by somebody who cannot speak English and or French? Maybe on the trees or the snails or life, okay? But not about people. People are speaking, people are writing, people express themselves in a language. So you cannot really understand people if you don't listen to them, if you don't read what they write, if you base yourself only on translations. Many things get lost in translation. So definitely, in order to conduct a good research about Canada, you need at least the two languages of Canada, English and if you want to understand Americans, can you do it without English? Okay, it's clear. France, it's French, and in Italy, it's Italian. But only when it comes to the Middle East, all of a sudden, hundreds of papers and articles and Ph.D. And books and who knows what else is written about the Middle East by people who have no clue in Arabic, are clueless in Arabic. They cannot correspond even with a boy in the street. What makes them such experts? No, we speak with the one Arab, he told us. Okay, who told you that he represents? Whom does he represent? If you cannot read the newspapers, if you cannot do the poetry, the stories, the history, the radio, the man in the street, you know what? Jokes actually represent, I think, much better a culture. I'll give you a good example. My wife sent me recently a joke. This is what represents. A medical student went to an organ shop. He needed some. And he asked the shopkeeper, do you have brains? She says, yes, up there. So he goes to the shelf and he sees brains in canisters. He says, woman's brains, $500. Men's brains, $1,000. He goes to the shop and says, how come the women's brains are cheaper? He says, they are used. Now, you laugh. Let's try to analyze. Let's try to analyze the laugh. At least in my case, my wife keeps telling me, like at least once in 2 days, use your brains. Okay, I don't know, maybe some other couples also, women keep saying to their husbands. Okay, so actually this joke, it is funny because it reflects the reality. Where a woman keeps saying to her husband, use your brains. Okay, so this is why we laugh. We laugh from jokes because jokes reflect the reality, which we don't talk about. It's not nice, it's not politically correct, it's not genderly correct, but we laugh when the joke touches the reality, which sometimes is an open nerve. This is why jokes, when you try to understand the culture, go to the jokes, because they actually reveal the reality, what happens behind the scenes. Why behind the scenes? No woman will tell her husband, use your brains in public. Okay? It will be in the car, when they are alone. It will be at home, but never in public. Okay? Again, the joke reveals the reality. So if you want to really to understand the society, or part of the society, women or men, you need the language, because otherwise you cannot understand even the jokes. So this is why I really criticize my colleagues in universities who write books after articles about the Middle East without Arabic, without Persian, without Turkish, without Pashtun, without any language of the Middle East. They think they know. I read here, I read there. I read translation. No, I read the English version of Al-Quds because they have a page in English. Easy. You know, like we say in Hebrew, they look for the coin under the street light, although the coin was lost somewhere else. Okay, because they can read English, so they read the English page of the Al-Quds Al-Arabi or something like this. I think I'll finish here my presentation about the problems of the Middle East. And I'll try to answer some questions because now we can have some background on which to base the answers. First of all, this ISIS. The Islamic State is actually what was oppressed through many, many years by the regimes. Everywhere and every time there was a little minority of radical Muslims, and I'll relate to this also, which tried to agitate the situation and to rebel against the regimes, the illegitimate regimes, which represented the colonialism. And they always were thrown, in the good cases, to the dungeons. In the bad cases, they were decapitated or hung up by the regimes. Mubarak did it, Sadat did it, Gamal Abdel Nasser did it in Egypt, Assad in Syria, big time through history. Look, people talk today about what happens in Syria. This is already the second round of mass violence. We heard already between 1976 and 1982. A big intifada, or big uprising of the Islamic Muslim Brotherhood in Syria, which was crashed in a mass massacre which happened in Hamat in February 1982. February 1982, where the tanks of Rifat Assad, the brother of Assad, actually flattened a whole quarter, which was captured or made a bastion by the Muslim Brotherhood. So today is already the second round. He thought that he got rid of the Islamists then, but they were under the surface and came out now when the Syrian state is dysfunctional. The same thing in Iraq. This is why this organization, ISIS, actually started not a year ago, not even 2 years ago. It started in 2004 as the Iraqi branch of Al-Qaeda, established by a guy named Abu Mus'ab al-Zarqawi, the same man who beheaded Pearl, Daniel Pearl, whose memorial statue is in UBC, right? They have a whole building or a whole, I was there. And also an American named Nick Berg, who was beheaded in front of the cameras by the founder of Al-Qaeda of Mesopotamia, Iraq. Later he was killed by the Americans, and he was succeeded by somebody who was succeeded by somebody else. And Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, who is today the caliph of IS, is the fourth or fifth in line after Abu Mus'ab al-Zarqawi. So it's the same organization which, through the time, cut the ties with Al-Qaeda, because Al-Qaeda is not enough radical, is not radical enough in the eyes of Abu Mus'ab Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, the caliph of today. Because Al-Qaeda, in his view, became a peace organization. So he cut his ties with Al-Qaeda, established IS, and implemented the most, I would say, ancient methods of fight, as he learned from the biography of Muhammad, peace be upon him, and his companions, like assaulting on deserted places, on small places, which always he has the power to capture or to occupy small places, because he always comes with big power, as they do today. Behead people in public in order to strike terror into the hearts of their enemies, as it's stated in the Quran as a whole verse which is dedicated to this, to exactly this. He amputates hands of thieves. He stones to death women, married women who go astray, flogs in public people who drink wine, and smoke cigarettes, because cigarettes are forbidden according to his version of Islam, because cigarettes were brought from this country to the Islamic world in order to destroy their lungs and their money. So this is why they should get rid of cigarettes as well. People are attracted by this, because for them, this is the original Islam, as they read in the books of history. So this is much more attractive than Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda never had any space, any land under its rule. Al-Qaeda was an organization which hid here or hid there, but it never had a state, a country, where they can implement the Sharia. So Al-Qaeda did not fulfill the aspirations or the expectations of radical Muslims. Okay? The Islamic State does. This is why it's much more attractive than Al-Qaeda. This is why Al-Qaeda today is in a competition with the Islamic State. And as you know, the attack on the Charlie Hebdo was performed by these two men who got their training in Al-Qaeda camp, not in the IS camp. So today, actually, we, or the West, is the victim of a competition between the old guard, the Al-Qaeda, and the new guard, the IS. And they compete, against each other. Who will be the better jihadist against the West? And don't forget that Al-Qaeda in the beginning was very successful since September 11, or even before. They blew up the 2 American embassies in Tanzania and Kenya, in Dar es Salaam and Nairobi, causing the death of almost 300 people in one day. They attacked the American ship, the Cole, in front of the Yemenite seashore. And so definitely Al-Qaeda has their history, but the IS actually is better, according to the radical Muslims. Now, here I would like to give a little comment about the radicalism in Islam. People today are used to talk about radical Islam versus moderate Islam, and where are those moderate Muslims, or when can we find moderate Islam in order to live with? There is no radical Islam, to begin with. Just like there is no moderate Islam. There is Islam. Just because there is no radical Quran versus moderate Quran. There are no two Qurans. There is one Quran. There is no radical Hadith, means oral tradition, versus normative Hadith or moderate Hadith. There is no radical history of Islam, which is different from the moderate history of Islam. There is no radical biography of the Prophet Muhammad versus another book of biography of moderate. So what is there? What we have is one Quran, one Hadith, one history, and one biography, which contains, every one of them contains everything. In the Quran there is a verse which says, La ikraha fi din, means no compulsion in religion. Great. You cannot force anything which connected to religion. You cannot force belief. You cannot force people to pray. You cannot force people to fast on Ramadan. You cannot. If people do it, they do it from their own will. Okay? This verse is a great verse. Nice verse. But if you turn the page, there's another verse which will tell you, go slay the infidels. Okay? So the Quran contains everything. The question is why things differ is the different question. But if you open the Quran, and by the way, Birshut Harav, I highly recommend to read the Quran. You know what? If you don't know Arabic, read it in English at least, in translation. But you know what? Read some translations, because this is where you collect what is one loses, you collect in the others. Never mind. So there is one Quran with everything, the moderate verses, or the moderate ideas, and the most radical ideas as well. The same is with the Hadith. The same with the history. The same with biography of Muhammad. I'll give you a good example. The moderate side of the biography tells us that one day Muhammad was sitting with his friends in Medina, and in the street in front of them, the Jewish community was taking one of the people to be buried because he died. And Muhammad asked, who is the one who is being brought to burial? So they told him. So he stood up to honor this man, because he knew him as an honest man, good man. So he stood up until the funeral turned to the other street. Definitely, nice attitude of Muhammad, who stops his conversation with his friends, stands in honor of a Jew who is being brought to Bet Kvarot, to Bet Olam. Okay, very nice. But if you turn the page, you find another incident where Muhammad slaughtered 800 Jews in Medina in one day. Why? Because they refused to convert to Islam. Okay, so what is the biography of Muhammad? What does it teach us? Moderate issues or radical things? Okay? It contains everything. Now, imagine a Muslim who was born in Vancouver. Here, grew up here, studied in this place, school system, and he adopted the Canadian atmosphere of tolerance, acceptance, be nice, be kind, don't step on anybody's step, okay, hold the door, like what it is in Canada. Such a man who, when he grows up and wants to be a good Muslim, if he was brought up well, he will choose from the Quran, the La ikraha fi din, there's no compulsion in religion, because this fits his culture, which he was absorbed from the Canada, from the Vancouver atmosphere. He will take from the hadith, from the history, from the biography of Muhammad, all these precedents which fit his culture. And he will tailor his Islamic garment with these moderate examples, verses, and so forth. And he will be a good guy. He could go to the mosque 5 times a day to pray. So what? He's a nice guy, moderate man, and his Islam is the moderate side because he takes. So we have a moderate Muslim. Imagine another one who grew up in Libya, in the desert. Everything there is either we or them, and there are always the enemy. Everything is violence, because this is the environment which teaches him, if you are not violent, you are dead. Okay, so when he has to tailor his Islamic garment, he will take from the Quran, from the Hadith, from the history, from the biography of Muhammad, all these things which fit his culture, because he was brought up in a radical culture, radical environment. So what we have is not radical Islam versus moderate Islam. We have radical Muslims versus moderate Muslims, whether individuals or groups, because they try to group with each other to feel cozy with people who think like them. This is why you find in Toronto, there is an organization named Muslims Face Tomorrow. Google for them. You might saw a lady named Rahil Raza, one of them, her husband Suhail Raza. Google these people. They feel much more comfortable with Jews rather than radical Muslims, because they are so moderate, and Jews usually, especially in Canada, are moderate people, are accepting people, are mingling the society, are part of the society. So these Muslims in Toronto feel much more cozy with these Jews because they share the same culture, not the same religion, but the same culture, because they are moderate and these Jews are moderate. He has nothing to do with these radicals. More of this. They will hit him before they hit me, because for them he is a threat, because he is showing a different way of Islam, a moderate way, because he is a moderate person. So this is the problem in Islam today. It is divided sharply, I would say even torn between two poles, and there are people in the middle. It's like a scale. You see on one extreme, you see the most moderate, like Rahil Raza and her husband Suhail, and this organization in Canada, Muslims Facing Tomorrow. And on the other side, you see the IS, the other pole. And everybody else is somewhere in the middle, between the most radical and the most moderate. So the people are different from each other. Islam is one thing. Okay, it's one body of sources which everybody adjusts himself to. Now, people become radicalized sometimes, because if you can be moderate, you go to a mosque, which is the only mosque in town, but there is a very radical imam who radicalizes the people. They might shift along this scale, and vice versa. somebody who comes from Libya, very radical, he can come to Canada and to discover that life could be different, and he becomes more moderate. Okay, so these are the things which you can see in Muslims. So that's why my advice is not to say radical Islam or moderate Islam, but rather to relate to people, radical Muslims versus moderate Muslims, again, individuals or groups, organizations, usually group people from the same kind of thinking. And this is also a question which was asked here. About Saudi Arabia after the king. First of all, it's not the first time which a king passes away. We had Fahad before, we had Sultan, we had Khaled. All these are half-brothers, as you might know, because they are all sons of different mothers who were all the wives of Ibn Saud, the founder of the kingdom. And actually, this he succeeded to build a very, very large kingdom and to contain many tribes by the Middle Eastern way, how to incorporate tribes. King Solomon, you know, he had 1,000 wives. I didn't create it. This is how he had a very stable kingdom. Because whenever he had some kind of family which was not satisfied with him, he married one of their daughters. So what? Now they will do anything against him. So this is a way how to incorporate people by marrying their daughters. Excuse me? Just imagine that a prime minister in Canada wants to create a coalition. Okay? This is the difference between democracy and tribal society. In tribal society, you can do it. Maybe you should do it. While in democracies, it's not so acceptable. So, so the Saudi king, Ibn Saud, the one who founded Saudi Arabia, actually this is how he incorporated tribes to be part of the kingdom, and every one of them joined it willingly because he took my daughter, and one day her son will be the king. So why should I act against the kingdom? This is how he succeeded. The tribes which he didn't incorporate are the rebels. In Saudi Arabia, two groups, the Shiites in the east. He wouldn't marry a Shi'i, and a Shi'i will never give his daughter to a Sunni, because Sunnis are impure in the eyes of the Shiites. So this is why he has always problems with the Shiite in the eastern parts where the oil is, and Iran takes advantage of these problems. And in the south, in the mountains, which later become Yemen, there's another group of people, it's called Najran. These people are a different culture. This is the culture of the mountains and not the culture of the plain lands. And he wouldn't marry any daughter of them because he didn't like them, and apparently they didn't like him. Bin Laden came from there. This explains the enmity between the Al-Qaeda and the Saudi regime. We all say they're always Saudis. No, they were from the kingdom of Saudi Arabia, but those Saudis who performed the September 11 were from the tribes which are not part of the coalition, the 10th coalition. Okay, in Saudi Arabia, the king had a name, a bad name. They called him Shahid al-Nikah. Means the one who killed himself in the altar of the bed. You know, where you make children, okay? He was too tired. This is how they make fun out of him, because he had many children. After all, he had many wives. Nobody really knew who are the 4 wives and who were the mistresses, or concubines, So every child is good child. So all these kings have brothers to the same father, and the mothers who were taken from different tribes. This one, Salman, who just came to power, this was smooth because it was prepared. But now, after him, apparently, will come the turn of the next generation. I still don't know, it was not published yet, what mechanism will transfer the authority from the generation of the brothers to the generation of the grandchildren. Whether it will be all the sons of the first king, and then the sons of the second king, or then the sons of the third king, or so forth, or the firstborn son of all the kings. The firstborn here, then the firstborn here, I still don't know what the mechanism will be. Apparently they know it, they didn't publish it. They didn't announce it yet. And I know that there is a committee which is supposed to shape and to phrase, like a constitution, the way how the kingdom will transfer the power from the generation of the sons of Ibn Saud to the generation of the grandsons. I believe that the kingdom will remain consolidated because they have much to lose. If they start fighting each other on the legacy of the Ibn Saud, it might be devastating for the state, because you know when you start a war, it's very hard to predict where you finish it. See, this is where you finish it. So this is, I think that at the end of the day they will find the mechanism, and it will be agreed by most of them, and the majority will force the minority to accept this mechanism, whichever it will be. Some who might not be satisfied because they will find themselves placed number 50 after their 49 cousins, means you never get to power. They might try to change it. I don't know. I don't think that they will have enough power, because their power is their unity. But you know, nobody predicted what happened in Syria before, 5 years ago. So again, it's hard to predict what will happen there. All depends on the mechanism of the succession of the king. Iran. Iran is a very problematic country, here by the way, which actually this map gives you the reason why it is problematic. On this side of the Persian Gulf, you see one state, Iran. On the other side of the Gulf, you see Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, 7 Emirates, which Bahrain here, this island between Qatar and Saudi, Oman. To the west, you see Yemen, out of this map right now. So on the other side of the Persian Gulf, you see 13 states compared to one on the other side. This makes the whole difference. Because when you have one country on one side with one agenda, one army, one goal, and on the other side you see fragmented a group of states with many disputes between them, many quarrels sometimes, especially recently between Qatar and the others. They cannot shape a policy. They cannot stand in front of this one country which threatens them all. So this is actually an imbalance in the Gulf. And this imbalance that actually creates tension, Because on one side you see one country which is determined to take the whole place over, while the other side is fragmented and cannot stand together. They don't unite their forces against Iran. So this is actually the source of the threat which every one of them senses from Iran. Now everyone tries to solve its own problem by approaching the Iranians and by subjugating themselves to the Iranians, like Qatar, like Dubai, who became like mercenaries of Iran in many cases. So this is the problem in the Gulf. Iran has aspirations to control I think, not only the Middle East, globally. I have here a document, I can show it's in Arabic. You know what, I'll show it to you here, which was taken from southern Lebanon. It is in Arabic, but is a translation of this weekend sermon of Khamenei. This document, I have it here. This is Khamenei, and this is the Daf Parashat HaShavua of Hezbollah in March 2006, 3 months before the war. One of my sons was in Lebanon, and the house which they took there in one of the villages was the house of the youth movement of Hezbollah. And as a good son, he came home with a sack of documents for his dad. So here in this document, which is, you can see here the date in Arabic, is the 25th of March 2006. Al-Imam Khamenei says here, as quoted by Hezbollah, the strategic depth of the Iranian people extends to Palestine, to North Africa, to the Middle East, to Asia, to Central Asia, and the Indian subcontinent. Quoted. Hezbollah quote him. Means the whole space between Morocco, North Africa, all the way to India. And this is, according to Ayatollah Khamenei, is the strategic depth of the Iranian people. Just imagine that I start buying things and disseminate checks in Vancouver, and I tell everybody here in Vancouver that the strategic depth of my bank account is Rabbi Dan Moskovich's bank account. Go to him. Because he is the strategic depth of my checks. Okay? The same thing, which he talks about. What? Did Egypt, North Africa, volunteer to be the strategic depth of Iran? When did it happen? Or Palestine, the Palestinians? Maybe Hamas, but not the PA yet. Okay, so this sentence, which is, as we say in Hebrew, shachor al gabei lavan. This is shachor al tzahov, black on yellow. You can read it very clearly. And he says these things without blinking, without feeling any embarrassment. Okay? This is their aspirations. And it's in Arabic. You have to read it. So this is Iran. Now, why do they need nuclear weapons? To implement what they are talking about. No more, no less. I take them on face value. I think that we, and many other countries as well, many other peoples as well, should not try to interpret them. If they said something, I believe them. We do not have the luxury of not believing what our enemies say about their plans, what to do with us. We once didn't believe. Okay? And if he says that he is about to take the whole area, I believe him, that this is at least what he wants. If he will do it or not depends on deterrence, mainly. And this is what happens in the Middle East. Iran, as a state, I think lives on a borrowed time. because Iran is another conglomerate of ethnic groups. The Persians who lead Iran are not even half of the population. They are a minority, which controls the others, who are Azeris and Balochis, Kurds, and Arabs. The only Shi'i community which are not Persians are the Azeris, while the Balochi in the southeast part of Iran and the Kurds in the northwest of Iran are Sunnis, like 30% of the population. Arabs are also Shiites. So Iran is not only Shi'i, there are other sects in Iran, and there is tension because there is a whole a war between the Baluchis and the central regime, and another war, covert war, between the Kurds and the Iranian regime as well. And if they were not a dictatorship, they would collapse long ago. So this is why Iran has to be a dictatorship, either secular one, as it was in the days of the Shah, until the end of 1978, or religious dictatorship, as it is under the Ayatollahs as of the beginning of 1979, since the Khomeini revolution. A dictatorship one day collapses. Dictatorship cannot live forever. We saw it with the Soviet Union, saw it with the Nazi Germany. Okay, this one from within imploded like the Soviet Union, or was forced to die, maybe like the Nazi Germany. So dictatorships at some point collapse. There is a limit for a dictatorship. Iran will collapse one day, whether it will be in a nice way like Czechoslovakia, which divided itself in a civilized way, or it will be a bloodbath like Yugoslavia or Syria. Okay, I don't know. Look, civilized way was also the Soviet Union, because the Soviet Union divided itself actually to 10 states. Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Armenia, Belarus, okay, all these. By the way, the one state which is a conglomerate of groups is Ukraine, okay, the Ukrainian Republic. That's why they continue with the problems, while all the others are mainly one ethnic group which actually became a nation state, like Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan. So this is, I think, the fate of Iran to collapse. It can happen in a year, 10 years, 20 years. I have no idea when it will happen. Definitely it will happen one day. The West could hasten this process by supporting the Baluchis, because the Baluchis are fighting. Unfortunately, the Baluchis are defined as terrorists. Jundullah, they have this organization, Jundullah, defined by Western countries as a terrorist organization. This is why there is no way to support this organization. But the price is that Iran continues to develop nuclear weapons, which can reach every point in Europe today, and according to some sources, already they can reach the east coast of America. Another barrel of fuel will bring them to the west coast, maybe as well. So Iran is a problem for the world, for the Gulf, for Saudi Arabia, for Afghanistan, their neighbors in the east. They cannot wait until the West will withdraw from Afghanistan, because they will take Afghanistan in no time to take advantage of the minerals and everything which was found there, and they know how to deal with the Taliban. They will not deal with them, but they will just slaughter them, because this is how they deal with others. So I think this is what will happen there. To be optimistic, when it comes to Israel, I think that Iran has some kind of derech eretz to Israel, because allegedly, according to external sources, Israel has all kinds of weapons which should deter Iran. I personally don't know, but if you Google, you will find that there are sources which say that Israel has something between 200 and 300 nuclear warheads on its missiles. I personally don't know if Israel has one, but the Iranians know how to read from right to left, and they take in account that even if Israel has half of this number, it is too dangerous, because if Israel is attacked, Israel might launch whatever Israel has, and this will be devastating for Iran. So they are not suicidal. They are a society which wants to prevail, wants to continue, to fulfill their dream to spread the Shia Islam all over the Islamic world, to convert the Sunnis to Shia Islam. This is their immediate goal, maybe to take Mecca and Medina. This is why Saudi Arabia is shaking out of fear from Iran. And compared to the Israelis, the Saudis have no deterrent against Iran. This is why they are angry at the Americans for stopping the sanctions on Iran, because this was the only thing which might have brought Iran to its knees and to give up on its military nuclear program. However, the Americans were scared out of these sanctions for some unknown reason, and Iran now breathes much more freely, especially near the centrifuges. So this is the source of the tension, by the way, between Saudi Arabia and the United States, to a degree that Saudi Arabia supported the Egyptian President Sisi when he ousted the Morsi, the Muslim Brotherhood president, who was encouraged by the Americans. So Sisi actually acted against the American will only because he was supported, mainly because he was supported by the Saudis, who are angry at the Americans because of the American reluctance to take care of the Iranian nuclear program. So this is, in short, about Iran. I was asked about the settlements and the peace process. Settlements, let's first define a settlement. What is a settlement? I would define it as a place which indigenous people were living, foreigners came, kicked them out, built a new neighborhood, and this is a settlement, right? When did it happen? I would say regardless of time. What does it matter? When? Is this a settlement? Yes. Yeah. Okay. Would Vancouver fit into this description?
Yes. Definitely.
Okay. So when we talk about settlements, we can start with Vancouver, or with New York, or with other settlements to begin with. Okay? Why should we start with West Bank or Judea and Samaria? And if you stick a pickaxe into this ground, how old will be the oldest Canadian coin which you can find? How many years? 150 years, let's say. If you stick a pickaxe into the ground in every settlement in Judea and Samaria, how old will be the oldest Jewish coin which you can find there? 3,000 years. 3,000 years. So which settlement is newer? Vancouver or Ariel? Okay? So when we talk about settlements, we also have to take in account history. Okay? History didn't start in 1948. Okay? And we Jews, we all together received the land of Israel from the League of Nations in the San Remo Convention of 1920. and this is fait accompli. I highly encourage you to read a book by Jacques Gauthier in English. He lives in Toronto, a Christian, and how he describes the right. He is a lawyer which deals with international law, how he describes the international law regarding the land of Israel and the connection of the Jews, not only me, you as well, to the land of Israel. So when we talk about settlements, we have to take into account the legal rights on the land of Israel and the history of the land of Israel before we start talking about settlements. By the way, there is an excellent organization named CILR, Canadians for Israel's Legal Rights. Usually it works from Toronto, but I believe that Vancouver also could be part of it. Go to their website, cilr.org, and see what they have to say about the legal rights of Jews over the land of Israel. So when I talk about, so this is about settlements. This is, in short, settlements or wherever Jews live in the land of Israel cannot be viewed as illegitimate because the land is ours since 1920, given to us by the San Remo Convention, the foundation of the international law, and as nobody would say that a Jew cannot live in Vancouver or in Seattle or whenever or wherever, I don't think that it is fair to say that a Jew has no right to live in other parts or in any part of the land of Israel from the legal point of view. The question if it's clever or not is another question. It's a political question. But this is according to everybody's political views. But when it comes to peace, we have to understand what peace means in the Middle East. In the Middle East, peace is something which is given only to the invincible. Only one party, group, state, man, never mind, who succeeds to convince his foes, his enemies, that for their own good, they should leave him alone. This is peace in the Middle East. There is no other kind of peace in the Middle East, unfortunately, but this is the culture of this region. It's not Europe. Look, if you see today the relations between Germany and the Czech Republic, which formerly was Czechoslovakia, or France, or Belgium, or Holland, nobody would believe you. If he doesn't read the history of the last 80 years, nobody will believe you that once was a vicious war with 60 million people killed in Europe because of Germany. Today Germany leads Europe, the European economy. Germany supports other countries which find themselves in hardships. Okay? If a Martian come to the earth, will he believe? If he sees today what happens in Europe, will he believe what happened there only 80 years ago? He will think you are joking if you say that once there was a war. Okay? Why? Because in Western countries, Western societies, they know how to open new page, how to look forward. They don't erase the pages but they turn them and they look forward in order to build, not to destroy. And this is what Europe today, this is what reflects, or this is the outcome of the Western culture, Western societies. In the Middle East, people are still fighting on the legacy of Muhammad. You know, the Shi'i-Sunni rift. What do they fight on? When Muhammad died, a struggle between two men started about who will be the successor of Muhammad. It happened in the year of 632 CE, almost 14 centuries ago. And they are still fighting each other viciously. Okay, this is the rift between the Sunni and the Shia. Okay, just imagine. You remember what happened in 2000 in the elections into the American presidency, when George W. Bush and Al Gore were the candidates, America was even, and Florida would be the tipping point. So, but in Florida they had a problem because they are poking papers, and some hundreds of papers were unclear. So even Florida was unclear with what Florida voted, either for Al Gore or for George W. Bush. So they went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court checked all these papers. It took them 2 days, and they came out with a verdict that George W. Bush won. And America had a president for 4 years, and later for another 4 years, and nobody dared to claim that George W. Bush is illegitimate president only because of what happened in the elections. Because once the verdict was accepted, that's it. No argument at all anymore. Okay? Imagine that the American nation would divide on this question. Half of the states support George W. Bush, half of the states support Al Gore, and they fight each other an all-out war for 14 centuries. Okay? You laugh. This is exactly this is the rift between the Sunnah and the Shia. They are fighting on who was the legitimate president, the legitimate caliph in the 7th century, until this very day. Those who support a guy named Ali bin Abi Talib and his descendants until the end of time are the Shiites, and the others who support another guy named Muawiyah bin Abi Sufyan and his followers until the day of judgment, these are the Sunnis. Okay? And this is exactly what didn't happen in the United States, because the United States is a Western culture. And in Western culture, you don't perpetuate struggles. You solve them in a way or another, whether it's just or not, never mind. We cannot fight each other until the end of time. And this is what ended the wars in Europe, and this is what prevented a war in the United States on this question, because they resorted to the court, and the court actually solved the problem. In the Islamic world, in the Arab world, you perpetuate problems as it is until one side ceases to exist. So this is the end of a struggle. But as long as two sides, when did you hear about any peace between two Arab countries, which was signed and honored? When did you hear? In Sudan, they had vicious war between the government and the South, so they divided the country. They didn't make peace, they divided. Okay? So this is how it works. When you cannot live with somebody and you want to end the war, you don't make peace with him, you just make a wall between you and him. Just what Israel did in order to stop the jihadists to come to our cities. Apartheid wall, okay? This is how people look at it. It is a life wall, but never mind. So this is when it comes to peace in the Middle East. However, we do have peace with Egypt and Jordan. How can we explain it? And here we have to go to the Islamic history. When Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, left or ran away from Mecca in 622, there's the Hijrah, Hagirah, the immigration. He tried to occupy Mecca 6 years later, in 628. He went with his army to occupy Mecca. Now, the Meccans had the good intelligence, and they knew that he is coming, and they collected all their army, armed to its teeth, and they met him near a village named Hudaybiyah, between Mecca and Medina. And when he saw them, this big army which comes to him from Mecca, he understood that he doesn't mess with them, because they are too big, too powerful, too trained, and they will get rid of him altogether. So he made peace with them, temporary peace, for 9 years, 9 months, and 9 days. 999. you know, in Israel, you cannot anymore sell anything for $9.99. Only $9.90. If you want to reduce the price, reduce it. Not with 1 penny. Never mind. So he made peace with them. He signed peace with them for 9 years, 9 months, 9 days. And he returned to Medina, they returned to Mecca, and they waited for 2 years to see if he's serious. 2 years he didn't attack them, so they went to business, to India, to Asia Minor, and the men left Mecca. He had also good intelligence, and when he knew that all the men left Mecca, he raided Mecca. After 2 years, violated the peace agreement, occupied Mecca, burned all the idols, forced Islam on everyone, slaughtered those who didn't convert to Islam, and this was the end of this peace of Hudaybiyah, 2 years after it was signed. For 9 years, 9 months, and 9 days. Muslims derive from this precedent 2 things. First is, if you cannot defeat the infidels, you can give them temporary peace, based on the precedent of Hudaybiyah. The second thing, which they derived from this precedent, is when Allah gives you the ability, the power, and the opportunity to defeat the infidel, now they differ between those who say you should or you can violate the agreement. So between those and those, you can violate the agreement if Allah gives you the ability and the opportunity to defeat the infidels, to do what you should do. So these are the 2 things which they learned from the Hudaybiyah peace given by Muhammad to the infidels of Mecca. Now, and look at the whole of history. President Sadat came to Israel in November 1978. 1977. His initiative, peace initiative. And it was clear that he wants to make peace with Israel. But here's the problem. Because some years earlier, when Gamal Abdel Nasser was still alive, Gamal Abdel Nasser received a fatwa from the Al-Azhar, the supreme Islamic authority of Egypt, that a jihad should be waged against Israel until the end of time. So how can Sadat make peace with Israel? So he, in his turn, issued a question to Al-Azhar, may I make peace with Israel? Now, they already heard that he was in Israel, they knew exactly, and their salary is coming from his budget. So they understood what he means by this question, that he needs another fatwa which will allow him. So they sat for some days and they issued a magnificent document, 3 pages, and in short they wrote that based on the precedent of our Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, in Hudaybiyah, you may make peace with the Zionists because so far we did not succeed to defeat them. Not in 1948, not in 1956, not in 1967, even 1973 was not a big success. So since we cannot defeat the infidels, you can give them a Hudaybiyah peace. Means temporary peace. This was the first time which we had to interpret with the scholars of the Middle East and Islam, what do they mean by writing this temporary peace. Second time which we met with this issue of Hudaybiyah was with Arafat. He signed with us the Oslo agreements in 1993, and in mid-1994 he established the Palestinian Authority. October 1994, he went to South Africa. He went to many places in the world in order to collect support. And he went to South Africa and stood there in Johannesburg, and in a mosque, somebody stood up and said, how dare you shaking the hands of the Zionists to make peace with them? So Arafat immediately asked, what did our prophet did in Hudaybiyah? And that man understood because he heard the word Hudaybiyah, which is a code name for a temporary peace. Means as long as we cannot defeat them, we can give them temporary peace, deceive them that we have a peace with them, but when they will come, we'll do what we need to do. In Arafat's view, the day came in 2000, 7 years later, after we withdrew unilaterally from southern Lebanon. He understood from this, from what happened in southern Lebanon, that Israel cannot take casualties of like some more or less 30 soldiers a year who will be killed, as it was in the last years of the IDF in Lebanon. So he thought if he starts an intifada, second intifada, 30 Israeli killed, they will run away from the West Bank, maybe from Israel totally. So he started the second intifada. Of course, he was wrong in his calculations, but this is what pushed him to start because we withdrew from Lebanon, it was May 2000, and he started the intifada 4 months later, because he derived the conclusion from what happened there. They want to make peace with Israel, definitely, the Palestinians, but in their view, their map is what they publish. You know, this scarf which they go around in demonstrations. On one side, they say, Al-Quds lana, Jerusalem is ours. Since when? When was Jerusalem any capital of anything connected to the Arab or the Islamic world? Not even one day in history. But it doesn't prevent them from writing Al-Quds lana, Jerusalem is ours. On the other side is Palestine. Palestine. The whole country. And this is by the PLO. This is the flag of the PLO. It's not by Hamas. Okay, so they mean peace. Peace by peace. So this is what we believe. And look, we are forced by the world now to establish a Palestinian state. Too many parliaments already recognized, like the French, the Swedish, the others. And we asked a very simple question. Does anyone in the world can prevent a situation where this future Palestinian state will turn into another Hamastan, either by elections, as already happened in 2006. Until this very day, the majority of the seats of the Palestinian Authority Legislative Council is occupied by Hamas. They have like 70%. So this can repeat itself. And everybody remembers what happened in June 2007 when Hamas took Gaza over by force, by killing 150 security people of the PA. It can repeat itself in the West Bank as well. Who can prevent it? The Americans, the French, the Swedes. Okay? So we are going to, maybe by the force, but by the pressure from the world, we will establish another Palestinian state. It will turn into another Hamastan. Evidently, Israel will have to go and chase them out, to kick them out, because we cannot allow 80% of the Israeli population live under the short-range missiles from Beersheba, Dimona, Ashkelon, Ashdod, Tel Aviv area, and all the suburbs of Tel Aviv, Netanya, Hadera, Afula, Beit Sha'an. These are all covered by the short-range missiles from the West Bank or from Judea and Samaria, while the middle range include Haifa and Akko and other places as well. So who with the right mind would allow such a thing? And if there is such a state, I think that within a year, there will be a vicious war which will force us to kick them all out. Means a Palestinian state in the West Bank is a prescription which almost sure to create a war, another war. So what kind of thing is this? Will the French come to get rid of Hamas? So what is the solution? As we started with the genetic problems of the Middle East, we'll finish with this. Since only tribal states are stable in the Middle East, as we showed in the Gulf Emirates, only they are stable and flourishing, this is the paradigm which we should follow. What do I mean? Already Gaza is a state. Gaza is a state. They have their borders, they have an army, they have military industry, they know how to produce missiles. We don't love them, they don't love us, like many other countries in the Middle East. They have judicial system, they have a police, they have Ministry of Health, which knows very well where all the Israeli hospitals are to send all the sick people to us, and it's okay. And they run a state already since June 2007, and nobody tries to challenge them because they know how to correspond with the society, tribal society of Gaza. This is why Israel should recognize Gaza de facto as a state. Again, we don't love them. Apparently, they don't love us. We can live with this. What will happen in the so-called West Bank? This is the only solution which can be there. What I call the Palestinian Emirates. I'm not trying to be funny, because this is the only thing which works in the Middle East. Based on the clans, the tribes if you want. Hebron is a city of 4 clans which live together nicely, peacefully for centuries. Jabri, Kawasme, Natche, Abu Snena. They can control themselves. Jericho, Arikat, the name of the tribe in Jericho. They live only in Jericho. Ramallah, the Barghoutis. Shechem means Nablus. The Al-Masri, Tukan and Shaka'a. Tulkarem, the Karmis. This is the name of the tribe there. The same in Jenin and Kalkilia. Israel should forever remain in the rural areas in order to prevent another Hamastan. And now they will be dug in the rocks, while in Gaza they are dug in the sand. Much harder to find them and to target them if needed. So this is the only solution, because this is based on the sociology of the Middle East, not on dreams or solutions which were brought from other continents and other cultures. This is the only thing which can work, because it's based on the clans of the cities in Judea and Samaria. You know, a girl in Hebron has no option to get married to a boy from Shechem, because they are nicht unseres. They are not from us. They are not ours. Just like between Dubai and Qatar. They are nicht von unseres. They are not our tribe. This is a tribal society. We have to go with it, not against it. Because if you go against it, you get a mayhem like Syria, like Iraq, or like Libya. You have to go with the sociology and not to create all kinds of states which are based on nothing but dreams or solutions which are important from the West. And this is actually what brings us to the beginning. Sociology and culture. We have to correspond with the sociology and the culture of the Middle East as it is. I don't say it's better or worse than compared to the West. This is not my business. And this is the reality, and we have to work according to the reality and not according to dreams which were brought from other continents, especially by people who do not know the language, the culture, the history, and how people think, feel in the Middle East. Thank you very much. There are some questions.
You want to do a couple? You want to do?
Depends. Yeah, depends. I'm here.
I know that it's been a long evening. Dr. Kedar is willing to do some questions. So why don't we do 15 minutes or so of questions, and I'll ask if Dr. Kedar can take all the questions now, and then he'll answer them. So if you'll raise your hand, and if you'll ask your question in the form of a question, that would be great. Hiya.
Do you see that Jordan, since most of the population is Palestinian, can be a good solution to solve the problem of Palestinian state?
I would answer because Jordan, again, another country which lives on borrowed time, because it is again another conglomerate of different groups which never became one nation. Never became, just like Syria, which all those groups in Syria, like Kurds, Arabs, Turkmens, Alawis, Druze, Muslims, Christians, never became Syrians. They remained loyal to the traditional frameworks, just like in Iraq, Libya, and so forth. The same thing in Jordan. There are Bedouins fragmented to tribes, and there are Palestinians who are also clans. They don't mingle with each other. And the regime, the Hashemite kingdom, is actually, they are not from Jordan. They were brought from Saudi Arabia in the 1920s by the British. So all the problems, the genetic problems of the Middle East exist also in Jordan. So this is why one day something will happen and it will collapse or implode or in another way. Already they have problems with too many people in Jordan who identify with the IS. They already had demonstrations for the IS in Jordan by people who didn't even bother to cover their faces. Means they're not afraid of the regime. You know, today to go around with the flag of the IS, it's sheer demonstration against the king. Okay? But people are not afraid. So this is what happens in Jordan. One day will come, I don't know when. My crystal ball was broken recently. But so I don't know really when it happened. It could be because of a road accident. Something might happen and burn the place. Yes?
Your solution sounds very logical with the tribes in the West Bank. Who would do it and how would they do it? Wouldn't that mean that they conquer and divide? Wouldn't they be accused of that?
Look, I'm not talking about how to brand it and how to justify it. I'm talking about what should do. Then you have to explain. I sat with, but you are right in your question, because I sat with one of the advisors of Netanyahu like 2 years ago about this plan. He immediately asked me, how can I sell it to the Americans? How can I sell it to the Americans? Means saying, because of the American ignorance about the Middle East, we are doomed to establish another Hamastan. Right? I think it's wrong. Yes, sir.
You mean to say that in the whole free world, there is no advisors or people in governments that see the things like you see?
I don't know what the free world is. I know what the American administration is.
The Western.
Look, the one today who has the ability to impose his views is the White House. And the White House worked with the State Department. And they are almost totally oblivious about the situation. I have the proof. In 2010, I was invited to Washington, D.C. to a conference of an organization named ASMIA, Association for the Study of Middle East and Africa. And I was asked to present a paper about the tribalism in the Arab world as a solution, not as a problem. Means how to use this problem as a solution. I came to Union Station in DC some 3 hours earlier because I had an early flight and early train, and I had to kill 3 hours. So I decided, I could maybe sell this idea to the State Department before I go to this conference. I Googled, and you know, those days they had a guy named Richard Holbrooke, a Jewish guy who was the special envoy to Pakistan and Afghanistan until he passed away. And so I thought, okay, let's meet with him. I have 3 hours, and I'll tell him, because those days the President Obama collected all his advisors to shape the strategy vis-a-vis Afghanistan. And he also called the General McChrystal, who was the commander in Afghanistan. So maybe I'll give them idea. Why? In Afghanistan, the situation is even worse than what you think when it comes to the division. This is Afghanistan. This is the map of the ethnic groups in Afghanistan. The different colors are Kyrgyzs, Turkmenis, Nuristanis, Pamiris, Pashtunis, Tajikis, Hazaris, Uzbekis, Aymakis, Baluchis, and it's not the end of the list. Okay? Different ethnic groups, different mindset, different rules, different clothing, different food, different languages, different everything. Just like Japanese and Romanians. Okay? Different. Okay? So they are different as well. This is why Afghanistan is a story of failure, because they don't even have a common language. They don't have a way to correspond with each other, so they fight each other. And this is the source of all, even Afghanistan. And America, unfortunately, with other countries, is resuscitating a dead body politic named Afghanistan. It should have been dismantled to ethnic groups just like the Soviet Union, which today are flourishing, at least part of them, flourishing countries. Okay? This is what, so I wanted to sell this idea to the State Department. So Holbrooke was not in the country, so I spoke to one of his advisors. So he said, okay, before I come out to meet you at the Union Station, send me the article, the abstract. I sent it to him by email. He calls me after 5 minutes, says, what, are you crazy? Isn't there an Afghani nation? I said, no, there is no Afghani nation. Not even one group is called Afghani traditionally. Afghanistan is an artificial name given to them all by the British, who hope that one day they will all sit around one fire and sing Kumbaya together. It never happened. It doesn't happen. And according to my humble assessment, it will never happen. And this is why Afghanistan is a failure. And it's a failure to send even one penny to this country until you dismantle it and you create homogeneous states which will, with leadership which will be at least legitimate in the eyes of the people, because they are unseres, belong to us, and not foreigners who Pashtuns who took us over. And this is what, so this guy, he did not even want to meet me. He says, spare your time. I said, come. Chaval al hazman. He's Jewish guy, he told me in Hebrew. Spare your time. Because, well, we are not going to dismantle Afghanistan. So I wrote him, I wish you to be out of there in 10 years. I'm not sure that they will be out of there, and ever. And if they are out, the Iranians will take it over. And this, they refuse to learn. And you know what? The story which I told Rabbi Dan, and this is the worst thing about America. There is in Israel a journalist named Eitan Haber. He was a good friend of Yitzhak Rabin, alav shalom, and Yitzhak Rabin nominated him to be the secretary of the government in his days in 1992 and when Rabin became the prime minister. So one day, James Baker, the Secretary of State, came to meet Rabin. And he came on time because he's an American, but Rabin was late because he got stuck in the traffic. He was late by 15 minutes or something like this. So meanwhile, Eitan Haber, the secretary, had good time to spend with Baker. And he told me this story. And they talked about something which I don't know what. So at some point, Eitan told James Baker, well, in this issue, you are wrong. You, the Americans, are wrong. So Baker answered him, well, Eitan, listen very carefully. America is right, even if America is wrong. It's not funny at all. At all. Because if there is a danger to America, is this mindset. If you think that you are right while you are wrong, you are in a problem, deep problem. And this is, you cannot teach them. They know everything. They are powerful, money, might, whatever they do. This is why it's hard to tell Americans, guys, You are wrong. They don't take it. Sir. Yeah.
Okay. First of all, I would like to thank you, and it means that you cannot even imagine for the support you give through the internet in dire times like Tzuk-Eitan, and just following what you're doing in Al Jazeera and the knowledge that you spread around. Finally, we can relate to someone that is doing just a
And the question. Thank you.
I know how humble you are, but I had to say it.
Thank you.
Then again, it's the second time I'm listening to your lecture. Last time was in UBC. Just to shift a bit from the subject of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. I'm just wondering, do we have anyone in the Middle East that we can look upon and say, you know what, these guys, like the Kurds, for example, they can be our friends. We can do something with them. Do we have any hope with Turkey? Man, I've been in the Israeli army, and we cooperated with the Turkey army back in '98. We shared training with them, and now look what's happening with the Turks. It's scary. So something out of the Arab world, say Kurds, if you can spread some knowledge about them.
Well, when I sent Rabbi Moskovich the list of lectures which I can give, one of them was Turkey, what went wrong? Okay, so if you really want to know what went wrong with Turkey, Rabbi Moskovich will have to bring me again. But just to answer your question about our friends in the Middle East. Yesterday, I spoke in Toronto, and two men gave me their business card. One is named Mirza Ismail. He is the representative of the Yazidis in Canada. Those who are targeted today by the IS, and they are in the danger of being exterminated. And the other guy, his name is Zoroaster Solomon. He is the president of Canadian Kurdish Center, again in Toronto. Now, his name Zoroaster, what does it mean? That he is Zoroastrian. He is not a Muslim, he is not a Christian, not a Jew. There is a religion named Zoroastrianism, which it's an ancient religion, which apparently remained in the Middle East under the cover of Islam. Means those people say that they are Muslims, but now when they succeeded to get rid of the Syrian regime, this is from Syria, he came to me and hugged me and kissed me because he is a Kurd and his name is Zoroaster and he's Zoroastrian. So definitely we can already, in one evening in Toronto, we already found two friends from the Middle East, the Yazidis and the Kurdish, with whom we can make business. Both, okay, the Mirza, the Yazidi, I met him one day before also, and we both went to the Indian consul general in Toronto. He wanted to meet us and to see, to learn about the Middle East a little bit. So what I'm saying is that definitely we have in the Middle East those minorities who see themselves targeted by Islam, like the Yazidis, the Kurds. Kurds, many of them are Muslims, but they don't share this way of thinking with the Sunnis, radicals. And there is a possibility that from all of them, we might have relations with the Alawis of Syria, who will have their own state if they would like to keep the connection between their heads and shoulders, because they will have to run away to the mountains in northwest Syria, on the Mediterranean. And definitely the Christians, the Druze, Okay, there are minorities in the Middle East who will contact with Israel in order to face the Islamists. However, I'm not so sure that Israel is running to create all kinds of alliances with people all over the Middle East, because once we tried to reshape Lebanon or to לעשות סדר חדש, a new order in Lebanon, and we didn't succeed so much. So, you know, alliances could be temporary, like dunes in the Middle East. We have to be very careful with whom we go to bed. Yes?
One final question, I'm sorry, just because we know we have to get you to the airport, and I'm sure you're going to want to schmooze individually. I'm so tired, I can't say shit.
I'm interested in your opinion on the penetration of Iran into South America and the threat that that poses to the Jewish people there.
Well, it's not only in South America. I am more than sure that they have sleeping cells in North America as well, not to mention Europe. And when they come, they will do whatever they have to do. So, look, we didn't discuss the whole issue of immigration to Europe, to this country, and this is another issue. Maybe a friend of mine who lives in Toronto, Jonathan Halevi, Jonathan Daho Halevi, he was until recently one of the editors of Shalom Toronto, a newspaper which is published in Toronto. I think he can give you a whole evening about the Islamic invasion to North America in general and to Canada in particular. He wrote a whole report about this for the local authorities, and he is very knowledgeable about the problems which Canada might face, and what we saw already in Ottawa could be the tip of the iceberg.
Dr. Kedar, thank you again so much.
My pleasure. Let us finish by music.
Friends, just to let you know, tonight's talk was recorded and streamed on our website. It's archived on our website, or will be as soon as we're done here. And you can share that link from our YouTube page with all of your friends and family by tomorrow. By tomorrow. Thank you all for coming. Thank you so much.
Leslie from Facebook. Bossi and
Oh, nice to see you.
Michael's friend.
Very good. Thank you very much. What did you want? תודה רבה.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
I come from Morocco.
So you know what I talk about.
I said from day one is a tribal issue, not other way.
So,
we are Sephardi,
תודה לך על
we
ההערה.
have lived for centuries.
Thank you,
That
thank you
was
very much.
really great.
מצאתי שתי דוגמאות שאיכשהו יוצרות חור בתיאוריה שלך, אני לא יודע מה הדוגמאות שלי מדויקות או לא, שהמדינה